The lead story in this first AI Bulletin format, Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei says an AI tsunami is on the horizon. Well, this is our daily rundown of AI stories, a new format on a new channel. AI, science, and the tech that's chewing through society like a wood chipper on steroids. Those are the themes we're going to be covering. And today's big theme, the AI tsunami framing, fear, hype, hope, and the awkward question, who's steering, who's profiting, and who gets wiped out by the apparent wave of AI-driven technological innovation. Each day we'll aim to cover up to 5 stories, bringing you updates as they happen on the revolution in AI and technology. Well, the lead story, the AI tsunami, is on the horizon. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei is out doing something pretty rare in the corporate tech world. He's talking like a person who sounds genuinely alarmed by the product that they themselves are selling. In a recent interview, he said, "It's as if this tsunami is coming at us. We can see it on the horizon." That's from Fortune, February 24th, 2026. This sounds like catastrophizing, but maybe closer to a diagnosis. Amodei frames public complacency as basically denial, people insisting it's just a trick of the light, or to quote that recent movie, "Don't look up." A tsunami in this framing implies fast phase change, not linear progress. Systemic impact, jobs, institutions, security, and collective vulnerability. Individual choices don't matter if the infrastructure breaks. Buried within his alarming public statement is a governance question. If the wave is coming, who owns the seawalls, the protections, the defenses? Who decides what safe means, even when the incentives are to ship new AI features before their impact is fully understood? Fulfill contracts, no matter the moral implications or potential harm, and raise money to build technologies that the founders themselves have a high degree of trepidation about. We'll keep that in mind because the next story revolves around these very questions, the literal weaponization of AI and the pressure to comply with the very worst ideas and intentions. Story 2, government versus labs, the Pentagon Anthropic clash. The US Defense Department versus Anthropic has escalated into something like a brawl, a precedent-setting bust-up over AI guardrails in war and surveillance. AP reports the Pentagon cut contracts and designated Anthropic a domestic supply chain risk after Amodei refused to allow use for mass surveillance or autonomous weapons. And Anthropic says it's going to challenge that decision in court, again from AP, March 1st. Meanwhile, Reuters describes this as a referendum on how AI gets used on the battlefield, with an ex-acting defense secretary calling it a shot across the bow. That's Reuters, February 27th, 2026. This isn't just policy debate. It's about who gets to enforce constraints, elected institutions or private labs or the national security apparatus, or, let's be honest, whoever controls access to compute power and procurement budgets, if they can retain control of the emerging military AI applications at all. Of course, there is a long-term risk of emergent intelligence taking control of these weapons, a sort of autonomous Skynet scenario. But the more immediate worry is a little more prosaic than that. Elected and unelected politicians that abuse these fantastical new technologies, or that they slip into the hands of terrorists and insurgents. The geopolitics framing is that the US is trying to stay AI first, while labs worry about being dragged rapidly into the darkest use cases and about reputational blowback globally. So what happens? Story 3 is linked to Story 2. OpenAI steps in and publishes red lines for defense use, but also indicates that it is willing to cooperate with the Pentagon in a way that Anthropic was not. OpenAI moved fast. Reuters reports it's now detailing layered protections in a US Defense Department pact with 3 stated red lines: no mass domestic surveillance, no directing autonomous weapons, and no high-stakes automated decisions like the social credit system. That's from Reuters, February 28th. OpenAI itself put it bluntly in its public statement, dated the same. No use for mass domestic surveillance, no use to direct autonomous weapon systems, no use for high-stakes automated decisions. That's from an OpenAI statement. So are these the modern version of Asimov's 3 laws of robotics? Well, modern AI research shows that systems, even at the subsentient level, can lie, cheat, lay false trails, hide their true intent, and pursue self-preservation strategies. The 3 restraints listed above are likely not to last long for governments. Within artificial systems themselves and under pressure will likely be abandoned by the AI companies themselves pretty soon, because keeping up seems to be the overriding objective of corporate entities and countries such as the US and China. OpenAI is trying to define a compliance boundary and reduce internal employee revolt risk while keeping the Pentagon as a customer. This is a circle that they cannot square. No matter the semantic and moral contortions they are prepared to adopt. The deeper question, do red lines hold under crisis pressure, or do they melt the moment someone says national security and pushes a deadline or makes a threat to cut contracts? Well, I'm betting on the latter. And here we have story 4. OpenAI raises $110 billion and is valued at $840 billion. While labs argue about ethics, the money continues behaving like the AI tsunami is not a threat, but something to be surfed for entertainment. Reuters reports OpenAI clinched a massive round, $110 billion, with Amazon, Nvidia, and SoftBank named as major backers, an evaluation of around $840 billion. That's from Reuters, February 27th. AP also reports the scale and the infrastructure intent. This is about compute expansion and global deployment. This is the AI compute arms race in its purest form. Gather capital, churn out chips, build data centers at scale, model capacity, and seek more capital in a kind of doom loop. Infrastructure of the future or a technological Ponzi scheme? That's what we have to ask ourselves. This funding round lands right next to the Pentagon controversy, which means that public trust is being stress tested while the valuation of OpenAI goes stratospheric. And here's our last story. 5 deepfakes meet finance. Bank of Italy warns of deepfake scams. This is a story to scare the adults, I think. Deepfake fraud is now hitting the mainstream warning stage. Reuters reports the Bank of Italy warned about fake articles, images, and videos using Governor Fabio Panetti's likeness, something promoting investment products, and said it filed a complaint with judicial authorities. Reuters, February 26th. The Bank of Italy's own notice explicitly names the technique deepfake and says the content is completely fabricated. That's from the Banca d'Italia, February 26th. This isn't just about scams and loss of money by individual investors and institutions. It's much wider, with implications for trust infrastructure collapsing. That is eroding the trust people have in each other and in banks. When the public can't trust a clip of a central bank governor, we're not just fighting fraud in isolation, we're fighting epistemic decay. Well, we'll follow up on these stories in more detail, and we'll try to put out one of these episodes each day of the week. Thanks for joining today. Join us again tomorrow for this format, delivering AI news and change 5 days a week.